Hit it. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Captive Audience. It's Don Anderson and Leslie Snyder here once again to thrill you and then hopefully you have as much fun as we have. But if you don't, that's your bad.
That's right.
Because we're going to have
Put
a
it
great time.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff to talk about. Welcome to the winning side, America #1, and all that jazz. So, Leslie, what say you?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, as we were just talking about, there are so many wins to celebrate. Not that the fight is over. We're still in the thick of it. There's a lot to get done, but we've had so many wins, and we should be really encouraged by that. Encouraged and
Yeah,
proud.
and I think that's probably a great way to start. We'll just segue into. I'm not going to read all of these. Was just reading. I was looking at Coffee Cove the other morning, and the guy he listed a ton of the wins, and there are so many. It's so easy to forget what's been accomplished because they're so mired in the next story. But the USAID stuff, the negative net migration for the first time in 50 years, 2.5 million illegals already removed, fentanyl traffic down 56%. Lake and Riley Act signed, catch and release ended, record low border encounters, Darien Gap migration cut by 99%, largest one-year drop in homicide in U.S. history, law enforcement officer deaths down by 25%. I'm just going to stop there. It's incredible. And I know just here, I'll tell you where you see it here. I'm not sure if you're seeing that down in California, but when you drive the freeways in Portland in this area, the traffic is down. I'm kidding you not. It's down by like 30%.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
it's not down here in San Diego.
Really? Yeah.
Well, although it's summer. It is summer, so we got a lot of people on the road.
Well, you're closer to the border. That may be part of it. But I'm telling you here, and it's been like that for probably 5 or 6 months. I've driven at all times of day, all through the worst rush hour. And no matter what time of day you go, it's down at least 30%. And here's one other figure for you. Again, these are anecdotal right now. But because we have less illegals, there's downward pressure on entry-level housing prices and rents. That's the next thing to follow, and we're already starting to see it. So in the areas that had the highest populations of illegals, entry-level house prices, and we know this because our kids are in the market looking for houses, have dropped $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. People are dropping the asking price of these homes. And these are new homes already. And I think it's because I know it's because there's less people than there was before. And that's an incredible win, and that's going to happen across the country because it's economic law. If there's less demand for something, the price must drop. So we're going to see a huge benefit for that moving forward. Are you frozen there, Leslie? It looks like you might be frozen. So it looks like Leslie's frozen. And since she's frozen, that means that I'm going to roll along a little bit until she comes back. Let's see. Looks like she's coming back here in a moment. Well, that's the case. I'll just go with a few more of these other things here. Let's see. Antifa designated a domestic terror organization. Gas at under $3 a gallon in 43 states. 654,000 new private sector jobs. I mean, what a huge win that is. Obviously, that's going to be huge coming up on midterms. 4.3% GDP growth in the third quarter of 25. Now, just to give you an idea, 4.3% is huge. I mean, a healthy economy doing well, 3%. That's like 25% above what you would expect a well-performing economy to be doing. So things are trending in the right direction in a big way. Us on the West Coast, because we're in commie land, there's likely going to be a lag on that for us. Like other parts of the country are seeing sub $4 a gallon gas, and we're not getting that out here, especially California. Sorry, Leslie. But it's dropping up here. I mean, it's not low as it should be, but I'm seeing like under under 435, 440 a gallon.
Oh my gosh.
50-cent gas tax, which our state governor so generously foisted on the rest of us. So that's amazing. What is it in Cali now? Are you still, tell me you're not above 6 still.
No, we're not above 6. We're in the 5s.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. You see in the 5s.
Yeah. And the
So,
fives. I was at Costco yesterday. Gosh, I can't remember. I have a little tank. I have a 10-gallon tank for some odd reason.
mhm,
And so it doesn't really serve me to hop around town looking for the best price because I'm not going to save that much, right? I don't have
right.
like a, 20-gallon
Mhm.
tank. But Costco always has the best price, right? So it
Right.
was like 5.35, something like that.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So that's headed in the right direction. So
Yeah.
that's a positive thing, even in the communist state of California.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of nice to know. So, and those are all great things. Obviously, you want to see that continue. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, they Newsom always manipulates the gas market so that during the summertime it's cheaper, so people get really excited.
right. Yeah, that's
And
okay.
yeah, so it's not unusual for prices to fall during the summertime,
Mhm.
but it is, I mean, I every time I look at the price, I think, $2 of that is taxes in California.
Yeah.
So the rest of the country, if I were to just drive across the border to
Mhm.
Arizona, for instance, it would be like $3.30.
Right. Right.
Or it could
Yeah.
be, you know.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing about what the left does is they're going to cause they're causing this massive flight in capital. I mean, the businesses and the people with them are just leaving the state in droves, which means that you're going to have less of a tax base to get taxes from. So all of these wonderful programs they want to put into place, where are you going to get the money to fund it? Well, and the obvious answer is, as usual, from the regular working Joe. They never
Right.
tell you that. Like this clown in New York City, for example, and Seattle's another one. They always sell you with, we're going to go tax the billionaires. But guess what? Billionaires don't stay put. You do that kind of stuff, or millionaires for that matter, they just leave. So who's going to fund this stuff? Well, that would be you. Regular Joe, you is the one who winds up getting hosed
Yeah.
every single time. And this is true in every country, in every time, in every place, in every racial group where this is done. It happens the exact same way. Um, and
Yeah.
so
Well,
run the experiment again.
yeah. No, I was just talking about this with a friend just earlier today, and she was talking about her home values, the
Mhm.
value of her home, and how she lives in a 1,700 square foot 3-bedroom house, and the neighbors next door, she bought probably 15 years ago. The neighbors next door just sold their place, same size, for like 1.4 million. And I
Mhm.
was like, that's nothing. I mean, that's nothing, like, I mean, but she's like, who are these people? She said she knows several people who are in the process of buying a home or have just bought a home, and their mortgage is $10,000-$11,000 a month. I'm thinking, who? I mean, who has jobs to support that?
Right.
I mean, after
Yeah.
tax, $10,000 a month just for a house.
Mhm.
And if you do have the money for that, aren't you
Mhm.
looking at that and going, what the heck am I doing? Why am I spending $120,000 a year on a mortgage? I mean,
Yeah.
what else could I do with that money?
Yeah.
If
Is it
I've got plenty of money, I could be putting that in the market, or I could be buying something. I could be buying gold bars and stacking them up, in my safe. If I don't
but
have the money, I'm
Mhm.
scraping just to figure
it,
that.
it,
You probably have roommates, multiple roommates.
I don't know, but are those home buyers or are those institutions buying those? Are those foreigners buying those, looking to park money? I mean, because it seems irrational and illogical.
It
Um,
does. I think there's a lot of people. I have a friend who's a realtor, and she, as a side hustle, she does rentals,
mhm,
and she's been talking to all these people who are coming in and looking at houses and condos and things that she's showing them. These are all privately owned properties, and she said none of them have kids.
mhm,
If they are young, they have somehow they have a trust fund,
mhm,
or they've got some big mortgage banker job. They've
mhm.
got good incomes, but nobody has kids. Nobody's like a traditional family. There's
Mhm,
no stay at homes.
mhm,
Wives. It is two hustlers.
mhm.
Working big jobs, or they've got
Mhm.
a trust fund from somebody,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
that's the only way that they could do it. And
Yeah.
and a bunch of them are saying, yeah, we've just always kind of wanted to live in San Diego, but I don't know if we'll
Mhm.
stay. we're just going to give it a go for a year or so and see how it goes. Like this isn't like this isn't like community building, neighborhood building. These are transient,
yeah,
long-term tourism. You know?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of ramifications that come from that. I mean, and you just touched on a couple of them. These aren't family building. These aren't community building. These are like almost what I used to call them in the South, carpetbaggers.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. I mean, I'm not saying it should be illegal or anything, but I'm just saying it's not. It doesn't tend towards the common good. For
No.
lack of
No.
a better word.
No. It doesn't add value to a community. It adds
Right.
value to somebody's pocketbook who owns the property, but that's
Right.
it. It's,
Exactly. Yeah. And when it comes from a public policy perspective, we ought to do things that tend towards, that, right? I'm not saying put a gun to people's head and make them do things, but we ought not encourage behaviors that are detrimental to society long term.
yeah.
And I don't know. And I don't know about that specific. I'm certainly no expert on that. But we see this sort of thing. Unlike in this geography, the rules, the regulatory environment around building houses, and the constant encouragement towards building these gigantic apartments. So in this area, where I'm talking north of Portland now, you have these large swaths of land that were really recently farming communities. I mean, literally 3 miles from where I live, up to 2 years ago, there were cows, right? You could go by and you would smell the cows, and the cows are out in the pasture. I mean, that's how, here you get in the woods pretty quick. It's not like where you live. Up here, you're out there with deer and stuff pretty quick. And that's now in the process because of the growth and because of what a terrible place Portland's become. As usual, what leftists do is once they urinate all over one area, then they move to the next area like locusts. They can destroy that too. And so that's what's happening here. And so you got these policies where they're putting into place. You can tell this is what it is they start doing the Section 8 housing thing and building these massive apartment complexes, right? So they can get people within the boundaries of a 15-minute city sort of thing and just duplicate the same leftism and create another blue county kind of a thing. So we're in the middle of this kind of a battle transformation. This was when I moved here, this was definitely a red county. Now it's a purple county, right? But we'll see what this trend goes. It's been trending blue, but I think the results of the last 4 or 5 years is going to kind of slow that down. So we're going to see. But those are the ramifications of that. So all of these rules make it more difficult to build, which then put pressure on housing prices to go up because now you have a shortage of houses, but you got tons of apartments. And with this crackdown on this immigration, that's another thing that's going to play a wrinkle in this. Those are going to have to drive. Now you have a glut of apartments because you have too many apartments because those people aren't here anymore. So the rents, you would think in the next 6 months, to start to spiral down. And we're already seeing it in housing prices in parts of Oregon. I've not really looked on this side of the river yet, but I suspect it's going to start happening here because, like I said, there's a whole lot less traffic, which means there's a whole lot less people, which means that eventually the apartment is natural law. The prices must go down, and that's good because right now you're looking at probably $2,000 a month for a reasonable apartment. I would think $1,500 probably for a 1-bedroom that's not in the gun zone. You have to give it that caveat. In the you can walk around at night zone, you're probably looking at $2,000 a month around here. That's a lot, So for a young person, maybe 22 years old, fresh out of college, a little high school, whatever it is, that is that's a lot of juice, right?
Yeah. Well, they're not living alone. They're sharing, their roommate situation. Right. I mean, I've seen rental postings where people are advertising half of a bedroom, looking for a female roommate to share a master bedroom.
Yeah. Well, in Portland, I had an experience, and this is about 5 or 6 years ago. I was helping a kid find a place, like get on his own. And we were looking at places where people would have like a home and they would rent their bedroom, right? Like, so you're in the bedroom, sharing the kitchen, everything, right? And it was like $700 a month, $600 a month. This is like 5 years ago. And I saw that with my physical own eyes. I saw that. And I know in parts of Portland. So in Portland, you have basements. They don't build those in California, but you have
Mhm.
basements. And the basements don't have ingress, egress. I mean, it's like, so it's not technically legal. It's not permitted. But they would rent the basement. Maybe basements maybe like 400 feet, 500 feet. Maybe it's got to put a bathroom down there and a shower, and maybe there's a sink, right? And they're, $1,000, $2,000 a month for those, right? And so the parking in the old neighborhoods in Portland are just terrible because all these people living in these houses that were single family homes, but the reality is people are renting that basement out and they're collecting another $1,500, $2,000, and it's like there's no windows even. Or I'm not sure you've ever seen these basements, but the window will be like maybe right at the level of the sidewalk or at the level of the driveway, and maybe it's a 12-inch window, right?
Is that like Laverne and Shirley's window?
Yes, right. Like I don't think you could crawl out. Yeah, I don't think you can crawl out of it if there's a fire. Let's put it this way: my big rear end is not getting through that window. You might be able to get through that window, but I'm not getting through that window. I'm going to burn.
So I grew up here in a little beach town. All right, you can't tell by my skin tone, but I did, and I can remember watching Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley when I was growing up, and I've never had been to a big city. Was it Milwaukee, right, where Laverne and Shirley was took place? I think. Schlemazel, they always, inside their place, inside their apartment, I guess, they would always go over and you could see the feet going by their window, right? Because they were in the basement or they were subterranean, I guess. So that's what I'm thinking of when where like they look out their window and they see feet walking by,
Yeah. See, I grew up in a house in the basement just like that, and we play down there. That's one thing if it's just part of your house, right? Our playroom, our basement, all of that stuff was down in the basement. But that wasn't like living quarters. I mean, that's a whole other thing. That's what people are doing in Portland. And and you can't park on the street because there's cars everywhere. Yeah.
Well, we have neighborhoods here where they were originally zoned, R1, residential 1 unit, and now they've zoned them to be multifamily. And so what used to be a sweet little residential street has now been, turned into multifamily lots, but they don't like build the street up or anything. They're, like you said, there's no parking for these people.
Right.
No parking. It's the same street. There's no new parking. And so you've got a lot with, it could have a front house, which would be like the original house. And then they've paved the backyard and there'll be like a triplex or maybe two on the bottom, one on the top in behind the house. Where are these 4 households going to park?
Yeah, they're doing that in Portland too. So if you go down the street, there's cars on both sides of the street. There's room for one car. So if another car comes, somebody's got to pull over. I mean, that's
well, and some of these people are not of the highest caliber, and so they're parking their old RVs or their boats or their whatever, right? They can't put it on blocks in their front yard, so they're parking them on the street. And like you said, like how do you get, basically you just have to shimmy down the street or just back up and give it another go from the other side. There's one day I have a friend that lives in this kind of neighborhood, and there's a family that they've just flattened their whole front yard and they've put AstroTurf out there and like old aluminum beach chairs basically. And they have all sorts of parties and, random family celebrations. And so then of course more people are coming to the house and they're parking and they're playing all their music. The cops come all the time and you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. There is, I don't know, how can I say it? I'll just be blunt. There comes a time when you just have to like pull up the flag and leave. I mean,
right. And these are like old neighborhoods where, grandma and grandpa lived, and then they pass the house to mom and dad, and, they maybe like a grandchild lives in the home. You know what I mean? It's like, this is grandma's house. And now the neighborhood's ruined. And, the value of the home is ruined. The only thing it's worth now is just the land, so that they can then demo the house and then put up another multifamily place. And it's like, there's just no character. There's no community character anymore.
And it's unfortunate because this tends to happen in neighborhoods where they don't have, the people that are there don't have the wherewithal, the knowledge, the expertise, whatever, to go get involved with the city and or the pull to stop this stuff from happening. Because what happens is the powerful people pull those strings and they make those kinds of things happen, and it just destroys the neighborhood. They have got no investment in it. They've not lived there, don't care about it, et cetera, et cetera. And and that's kind of what you see. And I'm sure Portland's no different than other cities. My great aunt lived in LA. They moved in the late 40s, and I watched that happen in that neighborhood right by USC. And the immigration thing once again, and the neighborhood just kind of gradually started going. And it was like one of these neighborhoods where the lawns are immaculate, right? I used to go there and visit as a kid in the 70s, and I'm talking immaculate. And gradually that deteriorated until finally her house and the neighbor next door, which is another story. This Italian family, they moved in this house. They were born there in like 1905. Is this crazy? And they were twins. And they stayed in the house and they died in like 2006, right? They were over 100. Is that crazy? And they never spoke English. I remember I met them a couple of times. I guess their kids were super friendly with my great aunts and my cousins. And they all knew them, and they were exchanged, recipes and share food over the fence and all this, but they never were fluent English. They could speak enough to get by, but they died in 2006. And my great aunt died in 2009, right? So they, and they were all in their 90s. These two were in the hundreds. But bottom line was they were only two. They were like, their houses were like an oasis in the sea of garbage, because they kept the walls and everything immaculate, and everything else went to hell. I'm pretty sure they've torn those houses down now. I've not been down there since 2009, so I've not driven through there. My understanding is USC then went in and bought a bunch of those properties up, though.
That would have been smart.
Right. So, yeah. But anyway, to your point, though, you see that happening everywhere. And I know in Portland, they got these huge swaths where they just won't let any building happen. So what that does, of course, is it drives up the price of the places where you can build.
Yeah.
And, we'll see. But
I know. It's hard.
When you have 30%, when you drop the population by 20%, that helps.
Yeah. Yes, it does. We'll see.
Right. Yeah, so we will see. But you were going to tell us about, we were going to talk about, did you have something else? I was going to ask you about the segue into that gal in Great Britain.
Oh, no, we can segue.
Yeah. I thought that was such a fascinating story. What was her name?
Anne Widdecombe.
Yeah.
Anne Widdecombe. So 78-year-old former politician she was, former conservative MP. And Shadow Home Secretary. I don't know what Shadow Home Secretary is, but she was in Parliament for maybe 20 years. She was in Parliament. She started her career and ascended when logical thought still existed. And she, kind of like Margaret Thatcher, she was no nonsense. She, had conservative values. She spoke out against crime, against illegal immigration. She was very in favor of Brexit and Nigel Farage, and she retired. And last Thursday or Friday, she was found dead in her home. And the police at first said, "Oh, she had a terrible fall." But the Ring footage, the Ring camera footage was obtained by some press outlet over there, and they showed it, and she was brutally attacked and beaten to death with a bat-like weapon, a wooden bat-like weapon. And there's a guy in custody. He's 23 years old, and he drove over 200 miles to her home to kill her. So this is clearly a domestic terrorist who was fired up and encouraged by the incitement of violence that has been coming out of the rhetoric that has been coming out of the leftist politicians' mouths in the UK, just like we have over here, where people think an assassination culture has developed where people think it's okay if you disagree with somebody. I mean, they already do canceling. They don't mind if somebody loses their job, loses their livelihood, loses their business, loses, any sort of monetary benefit that they have from their social media channel. I mean, they arrest people for Facebook comments in England. And now this guy's just murdered her. And the police, to their shame, didn't admit it until some media outlet produced the footage showing that she was brutally murdered. They're so unwilling to admit that there's a problem with deranged left-wing lunatics. And a lot of these people, I mean, some are homegrown, but a lot of them are illegals.
So I just cut and pasted in the chat for those of you who want to take a look at the article there about specific to the death of Anne Widdecombe. It is like horrendous, what's going on. And, they are Great Britain, London, I think specifically, they are an advanced case of where we're headed if we don't check what we got going on here. They are further down the road to disaster than we are. But that's where we're headed if we don't put a stop to this. Now I don't know. They probably didn't give any details around who did it yet. Who they
did.
think did they? What are the particulars about that person?
The 20. Oh, I was wrong. 28, not 23. 28-year-old man remains in custody on suspicion of both murder and terror offenses, though the motive is still under investigation. Of course, it is. Police initially said there was nothing to suggest a political or terror link, then reversed course. Counterterrorism officials have since called it a targeted attack, while stopping short of naming a specific ideology or motive. I mean, this is a woman. They won't admit it.
Where's this person from? To be to the point, is he a British national citizen, or is he like an illegal alien, or just an immigrant?
Let me keep looking.
And they may not be giving that up either right now.
Yeah.
In a rational world, that'd be front and center. That'd be the first thing you discuss, But we're not in the rational.
He hasn't been named publicly since he hasn't been formally charged. Says he's a 28-year-old man from Rotherham, South Yorkshire, but that doesn't. That just means that's where he lives.
Well, needless to say, we all know what the probabilities are around who done it. Right? We'll wait and see what actually comes out of it. But the behavior of the press and the police, their institutions in Great Britain, by the way, are wholly taken over by the radical left, top to bottom. In our country, the Democratic Party is like that, top to bottom. In their country, like all of the institutions are taken over by it. And it's just horrendous when you have police who come from the regular citizens, by the way. I mean, you're ostensibly you're protecting not just your city, but your mother, father, brother, sister, aunts, nieces, cousins, uncles, friends are living in that city, and you're willing to do things like this, like cover this up, and that's why I suspect either the politicians, including the police chiefs, are part of this stuff, or they are compromised in a huge way.
Well, we know they're compromised because we have the whole rape report that's come out.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have the heart to read it, but I keep seeing posts about how more and more is coming out, as the days are passing, and more specifics about specific cases, and it's been going on.
And this is my point on this, though, is how does that go on for 20-something years? And this, I'm going to beat up the British population for a second here, though. And the citizenry didn't rise up before that. I would like to think that in this country that would not happen, not for that long. I mean, that is incredible.
Well, I think it just goes to show. I mean, think about what we as Americans have put up with. I mean, we have men in girls' locker rooms. You know, we have Leah Thomas taking titles away from female athletes. We have Olympic, you know, MMA female fighters getting their face and skull bashed in by men. We have, you know, transgenders dominating. You know, we had a transgender as the head of the military. What was, can't remember his position, but we had another one, you know, head of our like nuclear task force or whatever. I can't remember all the names, but you know, the dude with the lipstick that was,
how could we forget
the luggage at the airport.
I'm trying to wash my brain of that.
I mean, you know, you just there.
But let me,
what we put up with, and these people, and that's not personal terror. Those are not actual terror attacks. I mean, of course, you know, you've got some violence and some rapes and some things like that, but these are people that have lived under a violent terrorist authority, right? I mean, we haven't gotten there.
well, and that's the thing that I would suggest. I would not argue with anything you say. I'm amazed. If you'd have told me 20 years ago that Americans would put up with what we put up with over the last 5 years, I would not have believed you. But we have. But what Great Britain has put up with this next level. I mean, they're throwing people in jail for social media, you know, stuff. For there's no free speech. I mean, the country that brought us what Shakespeare, the country that brought us like, you know, really that brought us what we have. This is, you know, we come from that tradition that they would put up with that, and that they would let their daughters be raped for like 20 years in a row. I mean, like, there is no, I don't know, I can't think of a crime worse than that, by the way. This, you know, it's such a personal, heinous crime. You know, it's worse than shooting somebody in the head, to my mind, to do something like that. And they have let that go on for that long. I just don't know if enough of us, enough Americans are cowed into submission enough to put up with that, like the British have.
Well,
this is my gut.
I think so. Unlike, so we are unlike the Brits in that, first of all, we formed a country to separate from authoritarian rule, from a monarchy, from top down, right? So the true American spirit is fierce independence, self-sufficiency, personal defense, and we're armed. And so just like that Marine that you know, I can't remember, what is it, Texas? That Marine who his 15-year-old daughter was raped, and he went out and found the guy and shot him, and he ran for sheriff. And he won.
Yeah. Well, we have this innate understanding that the government works for us and not the reverse. And I think that's perhaps the biggest distinction. They are in places like in Europe, they are citizens, they are subjects. In the United States, we are citizens. And at bottom, I think on top of, because the enforcement arm for that, of course, is the Second Amendment, which they don't have. But the ideology that supports that is the belief that we don't belong to the government, we belong to God.
Well, and we technically, although it certainly doesn't always work that way these days, but we have this framework that supports all of that for us, and they don't. So they could be horrified and infuriated, right, when the father finds out that his daughter has been raped and trafficked around, you know, up and down the coast. But if they don't have an establishment that allows that, first of all, they can't get a gun. Second of all, you know, if they use it, they're going to jail. I mean, and their life is, I don't know. It's just not,
And see what that goes back to is, so at the end of the day, what you're ultimately relying upon, and we all are anyway, is the willingness of our leadership to follow Judeo-Christian principles, right? I didn't say you had to be Christian, but you had to follow those principles. And clearly in Great Britain over the last 40 or 50 years, they've gone a lot further down the road of getting away from that than we have. Now, for sure, we ain't where we were 30 or 40 years ago, but they are way further down the road than we are, and they don't have the safeguards that we have on top of that.
Yeah.
So, because we'll eventually be in the same place they are if we don't check it.
Yeah.
We're just better positioned to slow it down because of the institutions that we have in place that you just described.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd like to think that if something like that were to happen to my daughter, I would, of course, like any parent, I think, I'd be out of my mind. And I would want revenge immediately. But I would also be thinking to myself, how can I get away with it? How can I make sure that I get away with it? You show up and take care of business. You got to figure out a sneaky way.
I can't fathom that whole thing. I mean, you think about the guy, for example, the father of Nicole Simpson. We'll just use that as an example since that's a public one. What do you do with that? I mean, you watch this monster basically just get away with it and talk on TV about it and like sell books and make money out of it. And yet, if you go destroy this person, which you certainly could do, not only will you destroy your life, but maybe you have other children, grandchildren, wife, whatever, spouse, whatever, and that's all blown out. So you can't. At the end of the day, that's the rate limiter.
That's what I mean. That's why you have to figure out a way to get away with it.
Yeah, and you can't. In spite of the Jason Bourne novels and all that kind of stuff, most of us just aren't in a position to do that, and that's where you have to go to the altar. That's God. I mean, that's vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and you have to recognize that He's going to take care of that.
Maybe that's the mentality that these people have. Although you would think that they would be equipping their daughters to not become victimized.
Well, and the part I just said was after it's happening. Now, before it's happened, what can we do to prevent that from happening? And if our law enforcement and all those people aren't going to do it, if you're British, you got to figure a way. I wish we could just airlift guns and drop them off in their country, because that's what they need.
Well, or you just have to have super duper real conversations with your daughters. If Laura down the street is victimized in this way, you make sure that you tell Laura's story up and down, every city street, so that every girl knows. And you're teaching them self-defense, and you're telling them to never be alone, always be in a group, never trust those guys. Like, exactly who the perpetrators are. They all come from a certain group of people.
And see, near term, that's a solution for that individual case. But at some point, you got to do something about the bigger picture problem, which is all these illegals coming into your country. Let me give you like a quick scenario that I experienced this past weekend, because it's so amazing. So I went to my great niece's softball game. Now, I'm definitely going to be old now when you're going to your great nieces, but it was awesome, right? So my nephew's there, niece is there. It's out in west of Portland, so it's suburbia. And I'm telling you, it was beautiful. Not a blade of grass was out of place, not a piece of litter on the ground. You could eat off the bathroom floor. It was so clean, right? Snack shack. Teenagers working a snack shack. How you doing, sir? Yes, sir. No, sir. Can I get that for you, sir? Parents coaching their kids, don't step in front of those people. Make sure you say, excuse me. I mean, it was like, can I get your litter for you, sir? I'll take that to the garbage for you. I was like, man, I was like on the Wayback Machine. Is this 1965? It was like awesome. Now, and as my wife and I sat there in this amazing setting, and when we have summer in Oregon, I'm telling you, there is no place like this place when the weather's good. It's stunning. The green, the roses, the blue sky. I mean, it's like amazing. And the people are like, the banter between the coaches and the referees is all good. If there's a disagreement, they settle it like men in a nice way, and everybody's polite. Fans are like complimenting the other team's players when they make a great play. I mean, it was just, so we walked out of there, and my wife and I are like, okay, where does that come from? Right now, where that comes from is that's the detritus of Christianity. That's what that is. and we take that whole thing is Christian. Now, there's no religious symbols, nobody's out there praying or anything, right? But people behave like that because they were Christianized, right? And that's the atmosphere you get. That's the way it is, by the way, in probably 90% of the country. Forget what the media is telling you, because we all know our media lies, and all they focus on is the blue cities, LA, New York, Detroit, all the places that are hellholes. But as these citizens from overseas found out when they came into the World Cup, that's the America that they saw when my wife and I saw at this softball game. And if you want to keep that, then you have to have a monoculture, right? And that means a Judeo-Christian culture. You can't be bringing people in here from cultures that are anathema to that. And that's what's happened to Great Britain. Ultimately, that's the solution. Those people got to go home. So you don't have to worry about telling your daughter all that stuff. Like out there at this game here, you had to worry about that. You don't have to worry about none of that. It's in the middle of the night. And by the way, this field was immaculate and it's unguarded at night. You don't have to worry about people coming and urinating, defecating, fornicating, doing all that stuff, and the needles in the grass and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to worry about that when people behave.
Yeah.
And there's another part of Portland, like closer to downtown, where I've watched them before kids' soccer games. You see lines of parents walking the fields on their hands and knees to make sure they pick up all the needles before they play, right? That's what happens when you don't have it, right?
Wow.
So you don't need, and by the way, no police officers in sight. You don't need them when everybody's behaving.
Yeah.
You only need them in blue cities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this argument I just made, I never hear, well, probably would never get media coverage anyway, but I don't hear politicians or people of prominence making this case just like that. That's why you have to have Christianity first from a political perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about heaven and hell. I'm talking about life here is better. Somebody make the argument for me that if more of us followed 10 commandments, would things be better or worse? Help me.
Of course. Of course. Of course.
It's rational.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Never ceases to amaze me.
Yeah. When I just kind of back to Anne Widdecombe, when I was thinking about the whole, this assassination, it's making me think about, what's his face, who just died.
There's a bunch of people that just died. Let's see.
Sudden.
The senator.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham, right.
Yeah, and his sister just stepped into his spot to finish out his term, which ends in January, I guess. But there's all sorts of speculation about what happened to him. Was he the victim of a COVID mRNA vaccine? Was he assassinated by the Russians? Was he there's all sorts of theories, right? And the fact that you've got DOJ officials down there, or the marshals down there who are DOJ police. You've got the FBI down there. You've got things being taken out of his.
You got some shady action around that. Again, we can speculate all night. I don't know if we're ever going to know the answer to that one.
That's the problem.
Yeah, man, I don't know. There's a zillion things, and there could be things that aren't directly even involving him, like the old tit for tat thing. Have we not helped fund the assassination of Russian diplomats and politicians?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure that the CIA has done that. So this is like, well, you did that to us, then we're going to hit you back. It's kind of like the crash of that ship into the Francis Scott Key Bridge a couple of years ago. You would have to not know nothing about politics to think that wasn't a get back for the explosion of that Russian pipeline, which was a year or two before that. And they're not going to sit tight and just take that, right?
No, it's like you have to think to yourself. Honestly, I think to myself, wow, Putin has been incredibly restrained. All that America has done to try to, demean and defeat that country. Billions and trillions of dollars to Ukraine, and thumb in the eye by adding countries to NATO. And you just think, Putin's been sitting back and taking it for 20 years.
Yeah. And I'll tell you,
40 years.
I think the reason that he hadn't done anything before, because he couldn't do anything about it before. When they were newly formed back in when Putin got in office, Russia was super weak. They were just getting their act together, and they're still not super strong. But I don't think he was positioned to do anything about it until here recently. Because you look at, I think they've added like 27 different countries or something, right? After promising this guy that they weren't going to be doing that. And they keep expanding NATO east. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it's just a geopolitical fact that powerful countries want what do you call it, border states or buffer states.
Of course.
They have them, and they get good justification, seeing as Napoleon and Hitler both got to Moscow. I mean, heck, Napoleon was in downtown Moscow, and Hitler got to within. They could see the spires of Moscow with his troops. This is all like recent history, and so to think that you're going to expand NATO to their border, what are you, nuts? And they have what do you call it? There's a major naval base that I used to know this stuff. I want to say Sebastopol, which is on the Black Sea, and that's like in Ukraine. And they're going to give up their only access to the Mediterranean. I see nobody talks about this stuff in the national press. They're not going to let it happen. I'm sorry. Ukraine is not winning that war, and it's not gonna. And this is one of those forever wars that the Europeans want to keep going. And as long as Ukrainians we'll fight to the last Ukrainian. And by the way, United States, you pay for it, and Ukrainians, your citizens die for it, and as the Europeans just kick back in our defense industry and make a lot of money. As near as I can tell, that is the motive with this stuff, and that's why I just love the fact they were like pulling out of it and say you handle your own stuff. Personally, I don't think we should sell it. I don't think we should sell anything to them to use as weapons in the Ukraine. My opinion, if you want to do that, fine. You make the weapons, you go deal with it. We're out.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've stolen so much of our money already, and all these pledges to pay for their government workers' pensions, and it's like it just makes no sense. So anyway, whatever happened to Lindsey Graham?
I don't think it's
he's a pawn.
I don't think he just happened to have an aortic dissection, by the way. But how that happened, I don't know, and we'll probably never know.
Yeah, I mean, you saw pictures of him from the day before when he was all smiles,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean that is a real thing that happens. It's a genetic thing. People typically, there's one or two ways that happens. Usually it's like a car accident. Your aorta bursts from the impact. I mean, that's the usual. Or it's a genetic thing. And I had a friend recently who just had a surgery for that. They happened to catch it before it burst. So it's a scary thing because like 99% of the time, if that happens, you are out of here, right?
But that's also assuming that is the real cause of death.
I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt.
Right. That's the public statement, but anyway.
Yeah. Always a big what if when you get the benefit of the doubt to these guys, but you got to hang. It's not a moving target, right? So. Yeah, and then there was one other thing I thought that was worth, and I'm going to see if I can't cut and paste this. Let's see. Because I think this is pretty cool. Federal Appeals Court, let's see, rejects bid to revive in-state tuition for Texas students without legal status. So in other words, they've been given illegal aliens in-state tuition. So let's say that you have a kid and you're in California and they want to go to school in Texas, right? But they can't go to school in Texas. If they do, they have to pay out-of-state tuition, right? But an illegal can come and they don't have to pay out-of-state tuition. I mean, you think about how blatantly unfair, unreasonable, seemingly illegal such a thing would be. So we're funding people who aren't even citizens of this country that come and go to our schools, which takes up a position that your kid is less likely to get, even if you are in that state. And then the kid who's an American citizen's got to pay out-of-state tuition. it's there's something really, really wrong with that on the face of it. And I'm so glad that the Federal Appeals Court rejected that.
Well, it makes me so frustrated when there are things that are blatantly against the spirit of the law. You shouldn't even have to make a law about this or have a Supreme Court judgment about this. I mean, it's just so like it's in the it's in the verbiage: in state tuition, out of state tuition. There's no illegal tuition. I mean, they just made up a category and then made it okay, and nobody knew. Nobody knew that illegals were getting free tuition. Like I'm certain that no students sat in class and talked about, well, how much do you pay? Well, how much do you pay? Oh, well, I'm an illegal, so I don't pay anything. Oh, I'm out of state, so I pay 3 times what he pay. I mean, and it's just like they just make things up.
And see, when this goes back to, again, I hate to keep going back to this point though, if you have a immoral leadership class, then they will do immoral stuff, which is what this is. They don't have
Yeah.
any principles.
Yeah.
And I got to like segue to this because I think this is relevant, even though it's a slightly different subject. Here, remember we were talking earlier about with the drop in the population of people having kids, it's going to put pressure on these colleges, right? So a lot of these colleges are going to start disappearing because they're too expensive. And the return on investment for the kids is terrible because the degrees don't wind up getting jobs. So all these forces are starting to come into play. So here in Oregon, 2 of the biggest private schools have just merged. So Pacific University and Willamette University, which is down in Salem, both had to merge. And I just looked it up, and their combined student total is still only 6,000 students, right? And these are 2 of the biggest private schools in the state, right? So the reason for that is people don't have kids, number one. Number 2, people are looking at the cost of tuition and what kind of jobs people are getting when they get out and thinking, that is not worth the juice. That squeeze is definitely not worth the juice, right? And then I went and looked up the majors at these schools, the things you get degrees in, they're going to chop and slice that. I mean, it was all kinds of madness, gender studies and all this other stupid stuff. And yeah, and there's another private school here that just went under a couple of years ago, and University of Oregon bought the campus, right? This is in Portland. I can't think of the name. Oh, Concordia, major. And Concordia is I want to say it's Methodist, but they're all over the United States. Super liberal, curriculum. And the ones that had the most liberal curriculums are the ones that are folding. And the one in Portland just folded a couple of years ago. And they're under pressure all over the country. So that's a trend you're going to see too. The state schools will survive first because the taxpayers just get, screwed. But the private schools don't have the taxpayers to rely on.
Right.
And a lot of the ones that don't have these big endowments, they're going to have to start merging and going out of business. It's going to be an interesting trend to watch. So, because a lot less kids are going to school. They're like, hey, better go trades or go do something else, but don't waste it down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, I remember hearing, and this has been several months back, discussion that was out there. I guess Trump was talking about taking away some of the tax protections for the foundations for these larger schools.
Absolutely.
That, some of these foundations are really just holding companies for real estate, and they're not paying taxes on hundreds of millions of dollars. And meanwhile, they're still taking federal funding for different scholarship programs or this or that, the other thing, and they should be using their endowment for all of that.
Well, they should be using their endowment to keep the tuitions low. You're out there on a fortune, and tuitions are costing a fortune. You got $50 billion. Are you kidding me?
Right. And you should be paying taxes on that money because you're not actually, the point of a nonprofit is for the public good. You're doing something. It's not just your little fiefdom where you can, harbor your cash. That's not supposed to be what a nonprofit's purpose is. You're supposed to be providing some public good, and in exchange for that, you have some sort of benefits as well: protection from taxes, property taxes. So I don't, I
Wow.
haven't heard anything about that. Not to say that nothing's happening, but it hasn't been anything that I've heard. And so I would love to, I mean, like you just talked about, these smaller private universities are going to have to, they're falling victim to free market capitalism. The
Yeah.
state funded schools, the UC, University of California system, and the California State University system that, I mean, I can't tell you how many schools we have in California that have all these ridiculous DEI programs still in place.
Yeah.
Still, I
Well,
mean, I see those jobs posted, on Indeed and LinkedIn. I mean,
now they aren't immune to market forces. It just takes
yeah,
longer for it to get to them because students are going to start, and they already are saying, first of all, there's less kids available, so you can't escape that. Number one, and number two, the people look at that like, why would I come out of pocket 50 grand and I'm working at Starbucks? I mean, people looking at their older brothers and sisters and saying, I don't want that, right? So those twin realities are inescapable.
yeah,
One of the things, I can't remember if it was Oregon or Washington, but what they're trying to do is disconnect at the public school level the relationship between the amount of dollars you get and the students, because as the number of students drops, your money drops, right?
Well,
So
this
they
is
want
what
to keep it.
yeah, we were talking about this last week
Yeah,
about it was at the K-12 level.
K-12
That
level, right,
the
right.
unions are trying to do that.
So see, they know, they can know what's coming, right? Because I think Oregon's lost like a huge, both Oregon and Washington. I want to say they're down somewhere between, don't misquote me on this, I want to say 10 to 12, 15% in terms of the percentage of kids, and it's dropping every year. You know, it's going to drop a whole lot more because a whole lot of illegal ones aren't coming back. So you have that, then you have the natural drop because people are having kids, and then you have people fleeing the communist state, right? So you got several things happening at the same time, and if they don't do something, the numbers, you just can't. At some point, you cannot get away from math. You can postpone the inevitable. The private schools just don't have the ability to postpone it as much. They got
Yeah,
to act now, or they're going away.
yeah. Well, I hope that private schools have their finger on the pulse a little bit better than maybe those. I mean, those were probably people that were on the ropes already, or
Yeah,
institutions that were lucky to be in business still. But
oh,
I know at least at a K-6, K-12 level here in San Diego, the private school landscape is that these guys are fighters. I mean, they're looking around and they're doing everything they can to edge above the public school and other private schools, and it's very competitive.
yeah. Well, I tell you, and the thing is, and I know there was, it's been a while ago, but there was an article about there was a new guy came in from Linfield, and he was known for slashing and burning and getting private schools that were unprofitable profitable and basically saving them. And there was a whole lot of controversy because he got out there and the first thing he did was he started axing all of these useless degrees. And of course, they start crying the loudest. But the fact of the matter is you're not attracting students to go there for those programs because those programs help people. So the objective, I think, was to only do degree programs that actually gave you a skill when you got out. You could actually be a productive citizen. That might be things like optometry, it might be dental hygiene, it might be think about those things. When you get out, yep, you're hired, you're getting paid, right? So if we're gonna pretend that a college degree is to get you a better job, and it's not about getting in the old school days we call it advanced liberal arts perspective of the world and all that. No one talks about that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If it's really a jobs deal, then let's treat it like that. Just like you go to trade school to learn to be a welder, or you go to trade school to learn to be an electrician. Those things you do, you get out, or a pilot, you go to, there's schools for that. Then that's what needs to happen over here. We need to stop lying to people and charging them, letting them get out of school 60 grand in debt
yeah. Well,
for nothing.
maybe I'm naive, but I also think it makes, not only is it the responsible thing to do for the students, but it also makes financial sense for the legacy of that institution, because if you're turning people out who can secure employment, that person is more likely to be a valuable donor down the road. When you
Absolutely.
go right, when you go to your alumni, and that they're working at Home Depot,
Mhm.
10 years out, or,
Mhm.
they've got some, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, but they're a social worker,
Mhm.
these are because, or they're a substitute teacher because they got some weird, women's studies degree, and they can't do anything, real with it. These are not the people that are going to be able to give back to your institution, and they're not a success story that you can report in your alumni,
Mhm.
booklet.
Well, they're not helping your marketing either
The
because
foundation materials, yeah, I mean,
they're telling their younger brothers and sisters, don't do what I did.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, this legacy of, dad went here, kids went
Mhm.
here, grandkids went here. Like, that's just not gonna. I mean, these older institutions, Cornell and Harvard. I mean, those guys
Mhm.
have hundreds of years of history where they were great. So they're
Mhm.
still kind of operating on those previously fulfilled promises.
Yeah, no,
But,
they can get away with it longer because of their history, tradition, and their endowments. But eventually, hey, the free market is like death and taxes, man. You're not escaping that. You might for a while, right? But my
yeah,
friend, we're up on time, believe it or not.
no,
Wow, I can't believe that went by so fast. But
stop
hey,
talking so much, Don.
time flies when you're having fun. All right, Leslie. Well, hey, unfortunately, sports fans, we got to call it good. Thank you so much for joining us for another wonderful Wednesday. And Leslie, any
Right.
closing thoughts before we pull down the curtain?
I have no closing thoughts. I'm just, I'm just looking forward to next week.
Looking forward to next week. I like that. So you all have a good night. Arrivederci. Au revoir. Hey, I'm showing you how sophisticated I am. I have a few other
I know.
languages in my
And aloha means hello and goodbye. So I'm just going to say aloha.
I like aloha. Good night, everybody.
Aloha.
Oh my goodness. Are you still there?